Is this a life that you're happy with? Is this a life that you're proud of? What would your life look like in 5 years if... Welcome to the Mindset Gym podcast, where we exercise your way of thinking to help unlock your hidden potential. I'm your host, Emily Irwin, a registered nurse and holistic nutritionist with a passion for all things health, fitness, and personal development. All right, let's get into it. Hi guys, welcome back to the Gym podcast, and welcome back to Car Talk. This week, I wanted to talk about something that I actually heard on another podcast that just got me thinking about things. So I was recently listening to the Mel Robbins podcast, and she was talking about the Odyssey Plan. And this was a plan developed by two Stanford professors, Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. And this plan essentially encompasses asking yourself 3 questions in order to kind of reevaluate your life and think about the direction in which things are going. And so the 3 questions were, number 1, what would your life look like in 5 years if nothing changed? Like if everything went according to plan, if you didn't change a single thing about what you're doing right now, if you just kind of kept on the same route that you're currently doing, what would your life look like 5 years down the road? The second question to this was, what would your life look like if everything disappeared? If everything that you currently have was just suddenly gone? You wake up one morning and your job, your home, your relationship, the friend group, everything that you kind of have in your immediate world is gone. What would you do? What would be the direction that you would take your life in? What would you want to do with your life? What would you make your life look like if that were the case? If everything was just scrapped and disappeared? And the last one was, what would you do with your life if money, societal expectations, all of it, none of it existed? Like nothing mattered. There was no pressure, there was no stakes, there was no, guidelines kind of keeping you in a certain box because you have to make a certain amount of money or impress certain people. What would you do? What would you want your life to look like if there was really no limits? You could just, follow what made your heart sing, essentially. And I loved these questions. I loved the fact that they got you kind of reflecting on the way that things are. And the one that I found myself thinking about the most was actually the first question, which is, what would your life look like in 5 years if you didn't change a single thing and you just kept on with the plan and kept on with the things that you're currently doing? And I think this is such a good yardstick to kind of measure the things that you're doing with, because it can be really easy to get caught up in the day-to-day routine and trying to, do the next thing and check the things off your to-do list and get that thing done for the deadline at work and get your kids to this extracurricular event and do this and do that and just get everything done before the end of the day. And we can get so caught up in that hamster wheel of trying to get everything in our immediate future done that we can easily lose sight of, the bigger path, the bigger direction that our life is going in based on the actions that we're taking. And I love this question because I think it just gives us that moment to stop and really think about, what would my life look like in 5 years? What direction am I heading in if I don't do anything differently right now? And starting to think about how you would feel about that, right? If you are 5 years older and you're still working the same job that you have now, you are still living in the same home that you have now, you're still in the same relationship that you have now, you're still hanging out with the same friends that you have now, you're still making a similar amount of money to what you have now. And how do you feel about that? Is this a life that you're happy with? Is this a life that you're proud of? Is that a future that you want to work towards? And unintentionally, I feel like this has been kind of a yardstick that I've used in my own life to make decisions about where I want to go. I remember there was a time years ago that I put this question into practice when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my career. So from the age of maybe 7 or 8 years old, I always knew I wanted to be a nurse. It was no question. It was like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm really interested in. There was just no decision making. I was one of those people that, was really lucky in the fact that they left high school knowing exactly what they wanted to do, knowing exactly what kind of path they wanted to take. I remember when I was really young, I used to have to pull all-nighters every so often because I was having seizures in elementary school. And so before any sleep study that I would do at the hospital, I would get to stay up. I would have to stay up all night because I have to sleep for the sleep study. And I remember actually being really excited about this because when I stayed up and pulled those all-nighters, that was the only time that the medical shows that I wanted to watch were on, which were Untold Stories of the ER and Mystery Diagnosis. And if you remember either one of those shows, they're either really your cup of tea or they're really not, and they were really very much my cup of tea. And I remember I would stay up and I would watch these shows, and I would keep a journal, and I would make notes on all the diagnoses that I saw, and I would write down the symptoms, and I would write down the treatment, and I was just so fascinated by all of it. And the thought of being able to get into a profession where I could help other people was so appealing to me. That being able to kind of marry this helping others and healthcare aspects into one job just was very much my thing. And so I always knew for the longest time that that was what I wanted to do. And there was no question about it. I finished high school. I immediately went into nursing school. It was hard, don't get me wrong, but there was no moment of like, okay, I think I've made the wrong decision. This is still what I wanted to do. And then I graduated from nursing school and got my first job as a nurse. And I was working in the hospital. And I remember having a kind of oh shit moment after this, because I was a few months into my career at the hospital and I hated it. I hated it so much. The fast pace, the 12-hour shifts, the working overnights, all of it I just didn't like any of it. And I remember coming home one night after a 12-hour shift and sitting on my bed in my apartment and thinking about, what is my life going to look like in 5 years if I just keep doing this? I was already feeling exhausted and burnt out by the structure and the pace of what this job was. And I remember sitting there thinking about what my future was going to look like if I didn't change anything and I just kind of kept in this job and I stayed exactly where I was. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the, future image that was bringing up. That wasn't a life that I wanted. That wasn't a way that I wanted to feel. And it was in asking myself that question that I kind of got to the conclusion of like, this is not something I can do for another 5 years. This is not a path I can stay on. And so as soon as I kind of realized that, as soon as I figured that out, I started to get to work. Now, I didn't quit my job right away. I still have to pay the bills. But I started looking. I immediately started looking around at what my options were. Where else could I go? What else could I do with this degree? How else could I still be a nurse without having to be in this particular structure of it? And so I spent the following couple of months applying to anything that I could find that was just not that. I didn't really know what I wanted my path to look like exactly. I didn't really know exactly where I wanted to go. I just knew where I didn't want to go. I knew where I didn't want to stay. And so I used that as my compass to kind of guide my actions and applied to anything that seemed different than that particular thing. Anything that would give me an opportunity to do something different. And I ended up getting really lucky, and I ended up stumbling upon a job working in community care that 6 years later I'm still doing and I still love. And I'm so grateful that I had that moment, 6 years ago of asking myself, what would my life look like if I didn't change anything? And it's funny thinking about that now and actually talking about it because, the future that I was trying to envision is the future I'm currently living in. And if I hadn't changed anything back then, I think I would be a much less content person than I am now. And so I want you to put this into practice in your own life. I want you to take a moment and really, really think about what your life is going to look like in 5 years if you don't change a single thing. Where are you going to be? How happy are you going to be? What kind of relationships are you going to have? Where are you going to be financially? And this may also be a question if you are in a season of your life where you're working towards something. Maybe you're working really hard and not having a lot of free time and not getting a lot of sleep because you are grinding away in order to build something bigger. Maybe you're saving up to move across the country. Maybe you are planning on switching jobs. Maybe you're kind of in the process of transitioning to something bigger. And so having that kind of 5-year outlook could be, where do I want to be in 5 years as a result of this? Where are these actions that I'm taking leading me to? What do I want the final outcome to be? And not only can that be kind of a roadmap to direct your actions, it can be a really big source of motivation to kind of keep you on the track when things feel really hard. Because there are a lot of things that, in order to achieve them in this life, require you to do a large amount of work, require you to kind of put your head down and grind for a little while to get to a larger outcome. And so if you're in a position like that and you're looking at the 5-year, outlook of how things may change, your life is not going to look exactly the way that it's going to look, because you sticking to your current plan actually involves you kind of progressing through this transition. And so where do you want to be at the end of that transition? And use that as your kind of North Star to guide the way that you move through the things that you're doing. But if you're like I was, and you're not really working towards something, you're just kind of in the routine, you're kind of in the middle of it, and just doing the day-to-day in order to get by, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but is the routine that you have one that fulfills you? Is it one that makes you happy? Is it one that you want to keep repeating for years to come? And if it's not, what do you want it to be? What do you want it to look like? And I think this is where putting the other 2 questions from that Odyssey plan into practice can be really beneficial, because if you look at the 5-year outlook of where things will be if you don't change a single thing and you don't like the outcome, great. That's good data. That's a good indication that it's time to start shifting gears. And using the next 2 questions can be the way that you can figure out your plan for where you want to go. So if everything disappeared, how would you pivot? Where would you want to go? Is there another field that you have always thought about working in but you've never pursued? Is there some way that you want to pivot your current career to work in something different? So like my example, if you are doing something like nursing, is there a different area of nursing than the one that you're currently doing that you want to try? If you're a teacher, is there a different way of providing education to others that you want to try aside from the one you're currently doing? If you work in admin, is there a different company that you would want to put your skills to use for? Like, there's different avenues for you to apply the skills that you currently have. Is there a way that you want to pivot and make it look different? And then the final question, if nothing mattered, if money didn't matter, if expectations didn't matter, truly in your heart of hearts, what would you want to do? What would really make you happy if you could just, scrap all of the pressure, scrap all the external noise, and just do what made you happy? Where would you go? What would you do? Right? What kind of life would you want to create? And so if you don't like the answer to your first question, use those next 2 as your roadmap for where you want to go. Okay? So that's my project for you this week, is take an inventory. Take an inventory of where you currently are in your life and where you see things going in the future, depending on if you change things or if you don't. And just see how you feel about it. I've talked about it multiple times in this podcast, the fact that, A, life is really short, and B, your life is yours. You have a lot more freedom to create it in a way that you want it to be, and a lot more freedom to build it in a way that really serves you and makes you happy. And I talk about it a lot because I think it's so important, and I think it's something that can so easily get lost in the thick of, all the things we feel like we have to do, all the bills that we have to pay, all the other people whose judgment we want to maybe avoid. There's so many things externally that can drive the things that we do day to day. And any exercise that forces you to take a minute and really look inwards and really start making those actions based on how you feel and what you want is just a perspective I love. It is something I love to take a moment and do, and it's something I like to encourage you guys to do because, like I've said before, this is your one shot. This is your life. This is your thing to create. And so the best way to make sure it is created in a way that you want is to stop and ask yourself these questions, or questions like this. Anything that kind of gets you reflecting on the things that you're currently doing and why you're currently doing them. All right, so that's my homework. That's my homework for you today. I want you to take these 3 questions, primarily the first one, and ask yourself them. Maybe write down your answers. Maybe take some time to reflect on them and make a plan from there. All right? Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you next week. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you liked the episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, or share the show with a friend. Your support helps this show reach even more incredible people just like you. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time at the Mindset Gym.